How's it going, and everyone? This is episode 42 of the Bitcoin Magazine live stream. Sorry about that. I'm hosting and producing again today. Both Q and Alex are unable to join the stream. So yeah, I mean, this stream was planned to be a lot different compared to everything that's transpired in the last 24 hours. So I guess I want to first off start by saying that my thoughts and prayers go out to Ukraine and the Ukrainian people and the civilians, and even the Russian soldiers and the people that, not going to say that committing the acts of harm or tragedy towards everyone else, but in the way the world right now, people are being forced to do things or coerced to do things that they don't want to do. And it's really sad that this is the way that the world is. I wish saying Bitcoin fixes this held true right about now, and maybe in a long enough time scale it would hold true. But for the time being, this is all we have in the mix of Bitcoin and fiat societies together. So yeah, it's I'm pretty much, that's all I'm going to leave it on there. We'll be joined by Lamar Wilson in a little bit, followed by Nolan with the breakup, and then we're going to end this stream, and we're actually going to be having a stream at 3 p.m. Eastern with a Ukrainian correspondent, talking about everything that's going on there, because Alex, Q, and myself are not experts in Eastern European geopolitical warfare and or current events and what's going on there. The only thing that I know is based on what I've seen on Twitter or what I've heard from a bunch of Twitter spaces last night and early this morning. But aside from that, I don't have a wealth of information or understanding of what ultimately led to this, what the next steps will potentially be, and what's going to be going on for the future. So, I mean, I guess I can speculate what I think is going to be happening I can speculate, but like I said, I don't have the best idea of what that may be. I think obviously Russia might get kicked off the SWIFT system. It seems Putin doesn't care. And yeah, he doesn't care about getting kicked off the SWIFT system, maybe because he's been stockpiling gold, maybe because he's accepting cryptocurrency, maybe he has a deal, ironed out with China for using the euro dollar to get around the US dollars for purchasing oil. Remains to be seen. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know it that well, but I can definitely see how this relates to Bitcoin, that potentially, if they kick them off the SWIFT system, but then they're successfully selling their oil reserves for not US dollars, for either whether it's Bitcoin, gold, or whatever, or working with China or enemies of the United States, maybe that, then Biden had an executive order waiting in the wings a couple weeks ago about cryptocurrency. So maybe the US would say they're trying to ban cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, or if they're preventing people from self-custody their keys, or I guess a bunch of different things. Whether it is, maybe the US goes after it because it harms their US dollar hegemony. But that's pretty much how I think it might go down. I'm not sure, but yeah. Waiting for Lamar still. Try and get in touch with him right now. Let me reach out to Alex. Yeah, I figured that this was going to be a little bit of a lighter stream because of light of everything that's happening. I guess a lot of people are more curious about what's going on in Ukraine and Russia and Belarus, which I don't blame. So yeah, still waiting on Lamar to join in. And once he does, we'll get an interview with him, followed by Nolan with the breakup. And then, like I said, we're ending the stream, and then we're going to be having a Ukrainian correspondent, which we'll be able to talk about what's going on in Ukraine at this moment. Don't forget to smash the like button. That is always a possibility, always something that should be done. Make sure that you also get your tickets by going to b.tc/conference. Use the code YTMAG for 10% off your tickets. Yeah, I guess I can talk about the conference a little bit. I'm really excited for it. I know the first day is going to be an industry day where a lot of industry leaders and companies and people will be meeting to talk about Bitcoin and all the advances that we're having. I'm really excited to hear from Seed Signer, also the Impervious browser, which is like, Google Chrome without Google, Zoom without Zoom. It seems to be a really cool addition and built on Bitcoin and all that, followed by 2 GA days, followed by Sound Money Music Festival. And we actually have the trailer. If you guys haven't seen it, we'll be playing that right now. It seems Lamar just got here. So I'll be playing that right now for you guys to check out the trailer, and then I'll get Lamar in here, and then we'll begin the interview. So see you in a little bit, everyone. How's it going, everyone? I am joined by Lamar Wilson, the founder of the Bitcoin Black Billionaires and co-author with many different authors of Bitcoin and the American Dream. Lamar, thanks for coming on the show.
How you doing, man? Yeah, it's Black Bitcoin Billionaires, everyone. Black Bitcoin Billionaires. But yeah, man.
Bad. I mixed them up.
Everybody does, man. It's alliteration, right? It's all those B's in there, but it's cool, man. I appreciate coming on the show, man. I've been looking forward to this for a while.
We're looking forward to having you, and we're also looking forward to having you speak at the Bitcoin 2022 conference. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to being on stage again. It's becoming like the Mecca of Bitcoin. It's like it's like the pilgrimage back to home or something. You know what I'm saying? Everybody comes to that event, so it's pretty cool to see, especially all my old heads and a bunch of people that I'm just now learning about on the internet. So yeah, man, I can't wait.
I'm really excited for it. So I actually have news. I've never been to a Bitcoin conference hosted by Bitcoin Magazine. I know I now work there, but last year I had a buddy's wedding, and then prior years I wasn't even into Bitcoin yet. I did have a chance to go to the TAB conference, and that was a blast. So I have been to a Bitcoin conference, but none of this scale. So I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, shout out Michael Tidwell. What's going on, Tidwell?
Yeah, Michael Tidwell threw an awesome conference for the TAB conference.
That's my guy. That is my guy. I call him Titty.
All right, Lamar. So let's get into your story. I guess, where did you grow up from? What's your family life like? And then we'll take it from there.
Oh, man, where I grew up, man, I grew up on the northwest side of a town called Lexington, Kentucky. the second biggest city in the state of Kentucky, but it's by far the best city in the state of Kentucky. Let's just say that. So I grew up basically to a couple of my dad when I was born, my dad was like a janitor. My mom was a what do you call it, administrative assistant now. They called them secretaries back then. And I mean, grew up a really great life. I mean, very, very loved, great family. Dad became a pastor later on in my life. So just a really good family. And that's how I grew up. And then from my mom, from my own standpoint, I've been married since I was 19. Had a kid out of wedlock. Then we got married, and I've been married for almost 22 years now, man. Almost 23 years. So yeah, man, it's I enjoy family more than anything. I'm always talking about generational wealth, but you can't have generational wealth without having generations, right? So I love family. I love love. I love all of that stuff far more than Bitcoin itself. I'm like, there's no reason for Bitcoin if you don't have love. Like, anyway, we won't get into that right now.
I love that. You can't have generational wealth if you don't have generations. That's definitely a quote that we'll use on Bitcoin Magazine's Twitter for sure. Yeah, and I guess that goes into the ethos of Bitcoin, talking about not just thinking about tomorrow, next month, next year, even 5 years. A lot of Bitcoiners talk about 10, 20, 30, 40 years, like you said, generational wealth. So I guess, how did you get into Bitcoin, and then how did you see it as generational wealth?
Yeah, man. So I got into Bitcoin because I've always been an entrepreneur. I had a software company, and we built this game platform, like playing games online, like Chuck E. Cheese. We were trying to like allow you to play games online, and then you get tickets, and you can go to Amazon and redeem those tickets for something on Amazon. It sucked. But when I was out pitching it, I met a VC who was telling me, he was like, I see you guys got this currency in your game. Like, have you ever heard of Bitcoin? And I was like, Bitcoin? I thought he said big. Everybody knows. I thought he said big coin, like B-I-G. I was like, heck no, I've never heard of that. And so we leave the meeting, and my business partner, he looks on his phone. He's like, I think he's saying Bitcoin. And he shows me the website. We look at it, and we both kind of like, whatever. So me and my co-founder, of course, like startup founders do, we're like, this really has nothing to do with us. So it's kind of like, what's the point? You know what I mean? So we, so what we did was we just went on and did what we were doing and sucked at that startup. It was called, it was funny because it was called Fever. And then what happened, probably, I don't know if it was a year later, I can't remember the exact time. I just remember it being a headline saying Bitcoin hits all-time high. And I was like, the heck, is thing still around? So I look at it, and I finally actually go look at the white paper. I go to the website, I get the white paper. I read the white paper, and I am blown away because I have a finance degree, and I'm a software developer by trade. And so there's no greater marriage of two disciplines than Bitcoin, right? Than those two disciplines than Bitcoin. And plus for me, when I looked at the white paper, all I saw was freedom, because I'm a kind of person that is really big on individual freedom, people being able to do what they want to do as long as it's not hurting someone else, and not having someone else control my money, not having someone else hold my money. I'm into that, right? I'm into like sovereignty, self-sovereignty, and being able to be sustained within yourself. And so Bitcoin for me just completely personified freedom from a monetary standpoint, me understanding how the monetary system works from the banks and all the lending that goes on. So it got me into Bitcoin. I started purchasing some. I can't remember if I got my first one in public. I remember that I went on local Bitcoin, found somebody, and we went to a McDonald's or Starbucks or something, and I got my first Bitcoin. And I took some of that Bitcoin and sent it to Mt. Gox, and just so I could play around with it, because I just didn't really know what was going on. But it was just so cool just being able to send it somewhere else, right? To send this Bitcoin somewhere else and then to play around with it on the exchange. Luckily, I got it off before, because things started acting weird on Mt. Gox for me playing around with it. And I was like, something's not right. So I immediately tried to withdraw everything I had as soon as possible. And I guarantee just a few, maybe weeks or a month or so later, Mt. Gox went down. So I lucked up on that one. But from there, man, when I saw the white paper, the craziest part is I started building a wallet called the Fever wallet, that wind up at one point being the only wallet you could get on an iPhone, not in the iOS store, because they had banned all wallets out of the store. but my wallet you could get because we utilized this special license that allowed us to distribute our wallet, distribute our software to anybody within our organization. Well, we made an organization that was a co-op, so then everybody was a member, so then we could deliver it to everybody. So that's how I got into Bitcoin. That's kind of like my early beginnings in the space.
Yeah. So when was the year that you first bought Bitcoin then? Was that like probably 2012, 2013 timeframe?
Yeah, it had to be there. Because the funniest part is like, I always told the story as if it was 2012, but I saw the picture of me being at that VCs in 2011.
Okay.
So it's like, because I'm not great with dates at all. I just saw the picture on my like on my, you know how Facebook brings back up memories? Yeah. And I was like, oh man, this was 11. I said, I've been telling the story a year late because I don't really know. I'm just, especially when you're a software developer that kind of stays in a cave, like you don't know when the day or night is, right? So yeah, but it's around 12, 13 is when I got into the space.
Yeah, that's so funny. Do you want to expand on the wallet development story? Because I think I heard it. I heard about you first from Clubhouse in January of 2021 when I finally got on that platform. I've now been only doing exclusively spaces, but can you expand on the story? I know it's a pretty funny story for our listeners to hear about you developing the wallet.
Yeah, so when I saw the white paper, the funny thing about that evening, I stayed up the entire night and I just started researching everything, cryptography, all kinds of stuff that I had never done. Like I'm a self-taught developer. And so it wasn't foreign for me to go and try to figure out how to do something else. But it was like, I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I sat up all night. I was running a software business with my buddy, with my co-founder, Leif. And I hit him up and said, man, I was looking at this Bitcoin all night last night. He said, I had a dream about Bitcoin. And I was like, man, well, I was in there trying to work on it all night. I said, I'm gonna have to build something. So I started off building this thing called Coin IDs, which is very similar to what people are trying to do with these names. Because I was like, if you have a Coin ID, you can map it into a address and you would have to use long addresses. But then I was like, well, shoot, for me to get that to work, I got to get in touch with all of the wallet developers. I said, well, let me just build a wallet. So then I built a wallet. And we used the name FIFA from the old game platform that sucked. Because we had the domain. It made sense. It was a hot wallet, right? We wanted people to know it was a hot wallet. And so we built that wallet out and it helped me to, then what happened was so crazy. The Texas Bitcoin conference was coming up and I looked on their page. I was like, man, they don't even have no black dudes on here. And so I was like, man, I said, I'm gonna hit them up and be like, hey man, I need to throw some black speaker on there. And plus I got this wallet. And so me talking to the organizers, they saw the same thing and they was like, yeah, come on down. You know what I mean? So my very first Bitcoin conference I ever went to, I was able to speak about my wallet. So I have not really ever paid for a conference because I usually speak. And it started off with my very first one. And shout out to Dave Bailey. Everybody who knows Dave Bailey, he was the very first person I met in Bitcoin. People don't know that. When I got out of our car to come to the conference, I saw this door on the bottom of the raceway where we were having the conference. He opens the door and he's like, hey, what's going on? My name's Dave. He introduced himself to me. He was the very first person outside of anything else that I had met in Bitcoin, right? So shout out Dave Bailey, man. Me and him been cool since that point, man. It's just, he's a really cool cat. And for most people, they don't know, he's like the man. He is the owner of Bitcoin Magazine, BTC Media, the whole nine. So shout out to Dave. What's happening, man?
That's for those that don't know. Yeah, Dave Bailey is the CEO of Bitcoin Magazine. He's my boss's boss, I guess. So he's the big kahuna, basically. So Lamar, so you have an interesting background in both finance and web development or computer programming. That's kind of very unique.
Right.
I know when I first looked at the white paper, I was completely lost. I have an engineering background, but anything to do with electricity or magnetism, I stay away from. I'm a chemical engineer by degree, so I'm more about mixing stuff up in the lab. But when it comes to computer and electrons, I always joke with my electrical engineering buddies. What they do is magic, and they say what I do is magic. So we have a mutual respect for that. So right. For someone that has a background more in computer programming, obviously you understood that, but did you look at it when you first saw it as the financial piece as well?
Yeah, so the financial piece for me was more so from a freedom standpoint, because I was just thinking, I was like, when I was reading it, I was like, this makes a lot of sense, because if the money in the bank is supposed to be my money, they're just holding it for me. But it's the only place in the world that somebody's holding something for you, but they put rules around when you can get it. Think about that. It's like they're holding it for you, but then they tell you on certain days you can't come and get it. You can't move it to someone else. You can't, right? And so I was like, this from this standpoint, it makes so much more sense because now I can actually program my money. I can put my money in there. I can move it around the globe. I can send it to a buddy in Pakistan that may be making me some shoes without getting on an OFAC list. You know what I'm saying? Like, I guarantee if people started sending money into Russia, even if it was just to get some kind of goods from somebody who might have created some hat for you or something, right? If you do that right now, you're going to be on some list. I guarantee. If you send dollars into Russia right now, somebody's going to mark you down on the list as doing something nefarious just because of what's going on in the world. My thing is that Bitcoin allows you to get outside of that because you can send it to whoever you want to anywhere in the globe. So that, for me, that's what I saw, right? That's the part, the financial part is what I saw. As far as like, it's going to raise a lot in value, I really wasn't thinking about that. Because for me, freedom is far more important because freedom is more valuable to me than just money. How many dollars can I get for something? Freedom is way more important than just having a bunch of fiat. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's why I look at things, because again, it goes back to my belief of sovereignty. I think if you have sovereign money, you have to start thinking about self-sovereignty, which is owning your own land, being able to protect that land, right? Doing the things that nation states do, but for your own self as an individual, being able to create and produce your own energy, your own food, those kinds of things. And so for me, that's what Bitcoin really highlighted by looking at it from that angle and economically saying there's only going to ever be 21 million of them. So I might as well get as many as I possibly can right now. And it wasn't about trying to, like, the price going up. That didn't matter as much.
Yeah. I think that's a great story. I'd like to piggyback on that as well. I mean, even if you're just looking at the last 2 years, look at what's going on with the Canadian truckers, with Canada trying to shut people's bank accounts. I won't need to get political here about what side of the aisle you're on, but yeah.
I'm in the aisle. I'm in the aisle.
In the aisle.
Yeah, I'm in the aisle.
But yeah, no, exactly. But like, just governments, tyrannical or authoritarian or whatever, just doing what's in their own best interest. And that doesn't always align with the citizens that they represent. One of my favorite stories in the space is from Russell Okun. I know many people know him. He's retired offensive tackle from the NFL, and he played in a Super Bowl and has a ring. But then he really became a Bitcoiner, I believe in 2018 or 2017. So he's a Nigerian, Nigerian-born American, and he was over there visiting family in the off season. And he brought US dollars that he earned by, donating his body to the league and to protecting a quarterback within the league. And he was over there giving out US dollars, fiat, that he had drawn from his account legally, and giving them out to his family because the Nigerian dollar, I think it's the Naira, was hyperinflating, or at least it's not as strong as US dollar. So many people, even in the local economy, want the US dollar. It's the world reserve currency, and there's a demand for it globally because of that. So he was giving out money to his family and relatives, nothing absorbent, just money to his family, and he ran out of fiat. And so then he goes to a Western Union or a bank in Nigeria and gives a call back to his bank in the United States, and ultimately says he wants to withdraw money. And this is not the Nigerian prince story where, hey, I'm scamming the bank. He told his credit card companies and his banks that he was going to be there from this date to this date. And ultimately he talked to the bank teller, and they told him that they, like, Mr. Okun, like, we really appreciate your service and like you being a client here, but we can't give you your money. And he's like,
your money.
Yeah, why can't you give me my money? Like, I'm here. I told you I was going to be here. Like, I'm not doing anything illegal, nothing nefarious. I just need more fiat dollars. I'm on vacation. And, ultimately she's like, I have to give you to the manager. And the manager basically reiterates what the bank teller was telling him and says that, I'm sorry, but you can't withdraw your money because Nigeria is on a non-OFAC compliant or not part of the SWIFT system, or for whatever reason that, we can't serve you, but we're happy to serve you once you get back stateside, and we'll give you your money. And that's kind of what really had him go down the rabbit hole back in, I believe it's either 2017 or 2018, to really dig in and see, like, wait, this is my money. I've earned it with my own blood, sweat, and tears, injuries, concussions, right, harm to his body. And they're telling him what he can and cannot do with his own money. It's pretty crazy. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Lamar.
No, man, that's exactly what I'm saying. Like, this is crazy. Like, it's almost like what's it called? J.E. Wentworth. It's my money and I want it now. Like, why do you even have to say that if it's your money? Like it's the only organization I can think of where there's somebody's holding something for you. And I can understand a trust or something like that, but that's something you establish yourself to make sure that money doesn't leave. But when you're talking about a freaking bank, I put the money in there so you would hold it for me, but I need access to it when I need access to it. And there is no other organization that takes your wealth and says, nope, you can't get your own stuff. Right? Even the storage container down the street is 24 hours, right? If you put your stuff in a storage container somewhere, like in a warehouse storage container, it's usually 24 hours. You can go there at any point and put your stuff in the storage and take your stuff out. But when it comes to the bank, it doesn't work. And so that makes a whole lot of sense. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think people understand those issues until they have to deal with those issues, right? Until you go to a place like Nigeria, or until you are somebody who is a global person, then you start to realize how rough it is around the globe, around trying to make sure you control your and handle your wealth. You were talking about it like today. We were talking about it earlier. It's today, like what happened in Ukraine and the Russia going into Ukraine. And I don't know if it's going to date this interview, but that happened today, right? This morning, Russia goes in and invades Ukraine, and people can't think about it. If they wanted to flee, it's very difficult. You can own land. You can own, your real estate, the stuff on top of your land. You can own all types of assets, gold, silver, but it'll be very difficult to flee with any of that stuff. And so now you have to leave your wealth behind in a country that is being attacked by another country. Whereas if you have Bitcoin, you just put your backpack on with a couple pair of underwear in the back and some water, and you got your Bitcoin wallet and you out of there. You know what I'm saying? And you still have your wealth. You can go somewhere else and be able to establish yourself again because you were able to take your wealth with you. And Bitcoin allows for that. You can't do that with a bunch of gold. If you put all your wealth in gold, you're not carrying it across the border, right? And so it's like those kind of things are far more valuable to me than just saying, oh, it went up this much in fiat dollars. Like that's, to be honest, that ain't even a property of Bitcoin that is going up in fiat dollars. It's a property of dollars losing value against Bitcoin. It's the fact that those dollars are whack, right? That's really what that is. So yeah, I feel that, man. People don't know the pain till they feel the pain. And all I try to tell people is like, look, this is what other people have experienced. That doesn't mean you're not going to. And if it comes, it's better to be prepared than not to be prepared, right? It's better to be ready than not. So
yeah. And my co-host, Alex McShane, he couldn't be on the show today, but he has a story that he said a couple times on the show as well. His family is farmers out in Iowa, and they've been on that land over 100 years. Like I think he said like 150 or even longer than that. They've paid off their debts. They own they built the houses on it. They farm the land and all that. And let's just say there's a special interest group that's trying to put a pipeline right through their land. So this corporation is going through the government and using eminent domain. So basically the government is being the strong arm for this corporation. The governments across the world have a monopoly on money printing and violence, and they're trying to use the strong arm before going to violence or money printing to go take them to court. And so Alex was trying to convince his parents, this is a few years ago, to get into Bitcoin. And they're like, no, that's magic internet money. That's not going to happen to us. We're farmers. Just leave us alone. Well, it just happens to show that, they have no debt on the land. They own it outright. They pay their taxes, and yet they're being told they have to give out a portion of their farmland to a special interest group that wants to put a pipeline right down the middle of their farm.
Right.
And then they're like, wow, Alex, this Bitcoin thing you talked about when you can't get anything confiscated sounds pretty good right now. And like I said, they've been there over 150 years. I know I was in a room with you, Lamar, on Clubhouse, and you said, you were saying, many people have used this analogy, like Bitcoin is as American as apple pie, but you even said Black people should love Bitcoin because you guys have a history of people taking stuff from them. So if you want to expand on that.
Yeah, man. And especially in this country, African Americans, what we have dealt with from the financial system is really there's a racial system that was set up, and everybody's like, well, racism no longer because those laws don't exist anymore. But I don't think people understand the residual effects of those laws. Compound interest is a thing, right? So if you're not able to participate in compound interest for a very long period of time beforehand, and when you are starting to build wealth at a rapid rate, right after Reconstruction, I always talk about this, right after Reconstruction, a lot of towns across America from freed slaves were coming up. And because they were kept out of the economic, systems that were allowing money or capital to fly outside of their community, they had to rely on themselves, and that capital continued to circulate within that community several times. What happened is that because of that capital in the community circulating many times, it built the wealth of everyone in that community. It's like high tide rises all ships. But here's the problem. Because they were becoming more wealthy, because they were building extremely rapidly, and there was a lot of growth out, they just came from slavery. They were able to get to a point where people had cars and people owned 5 banks. And like in a place called Tulsa, Oklahoma, in Greenwood in Tulsa, Oklahoma, like you're talking about a 40 block city that was extremely wealthy, right? And these are people that didn't have access to the, to the actual common mainstream economy. So what happened, people began to get jealous. And instead of them trying to work, the poor whites that were around them, instead of them trying to work with them, and even some of the ones that had money, instead of them working with the guys in Greenwood and saying, okay, let's build wealth all around, they went in and bombed them. And people don't know, before that even happened in 1921 and 1919, it's what they called the Red Summer, where there were attacks on these types of cities all across the country, like the Red Summer of 1919. People need to look that up. So if you think about it, in an environment where these people were slaves first, they were able to build for themselves. They started to basically, quote unquote, pull themselves up by their bootstraps, making economies for themselves, creating community for themselves, and then to have people come in and attack it just for the very reason of them doing that, right? Just because they were able to build. Now they get all of that wealth taken, and there's no recourse. There's nobody's coming to save them. So you're talking about in Tulsa, I went there last year for the anniversary, for the 100-year anniversary. They said that there's $2.5 million worth of claims that were never settled from back in 1921. Imagine what that's worth today in today's dollars, 2.5 million. But none of those families have seen any of that money from an insurance perspective. People talk about reparations, but that's not reparations. That's just contractual. Like, I paid you my premiums. Where is my money for these buildings that were burned down? There was a bank there that the FDIC or that the government never made sure they took care of the deposits. You see what I'm saying? So you're talking about that's just one city. All of that wealth was taken. You talk about redlining. There's a lot of things that the government had set up legally to keep Black people from out of building wealth in this country. And so when you look at Bitcoin, access to it is completely free and open. Like I said, I bought my first one at a public location. Nobody can stop me from doing it. The fact that I can go and purchase it and access it without having to have a certain credit rating, without having to live in a certain neighborhood, and I have the same opportunity as someone who, somebody who's poor has the same exact opportunity as Jack Dorsey or Michael Saylor to get the same Bitcoin, right? They might not be able to buy as much, but they still have access to be able to accumulate the same amount of Bitcoin. That is powerful, bro, because that's what happens when you have a decentralized platform. You get empowerment versus somebody being in power over you. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's for African Americans. And I know I gave kind of a history lesson, but I mean, I think we're in Black Future Month right now. This is February. So it's Black Future Month. So I think it's good for people to know the kind of things that happen. They got us to the point where we are. And that's why Bitcoin is very important for many people who look like me and who come from the kind of circumstances and history that I've come from.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point. And even if you think historically in this country, or at least, the better part of 100 years, what's the best way to build wealth? It was through real estate. And that's how many people have built a lot of wealth. But if you're starting behind the 8 ball because you don't have enough money, or you're considered a bad credit risk, that goes against you. And then let's be honest, even with redlining stuff, if you're, in a bad area, or if you're a certain skin color or religion, or you look a certain way, they can give you a higher interest rate as well. So while someone else can have a much lower interest rate for whatever reason, you and I could buy $1 Bitcoin and there's no premium on it. Yeah, okay, maybe where we buy it from. But if you go to Strike and I go to Strike, it's going to be the same, no fees. Or Swan or Coinbase or wherever you're purchasing it from, it's apolitical. It doesn't care about your race, your religion, anything. And I also like expanding on the Tulsa thing. I'm of a person that believes, kind of like you said, all high tides raise all ships. But even you don't have to build the highest building by knocking over other people's buildings. You could build the highest building by just building it and building up the community around you. Just because you have a skyscraper doesn't mean that I can't have a skyscraper just as tall or taller. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then you try and beat me to build something even taller. So you don't have to destroy in order to create more wealth. And I think that's something that's lost.
But I think the whole point is that there was a certain narrative that was pushed into certain people's mindsets, which is the same type of narrative we see today, where it's like, these people that came out of slavery, they started pushing the narrative like they're going to take your jobs. There aren't that many jobs out here. It comes from a place of scarcity, right? There's not that many jobs out here. These people that are coming out of slavery are going to take your jobs, and you don't want them to make it because they're going to take your place in society. And it's like people, the haves, implant these types of mentalities into people. And so now you see the same thing happening with people from Mexico and other places in Latin America. Like when they come here, it's like, oh, they're going to take your jobs. It's the same thing to help divide us. And now, of course, the division thing is, are you going to wear a mask or not? Right? Are you going to get vaccinated or not? It's like, I don't think we've understood exactly what's going on in this country, because usually what happens is the people that don't have a whole lot, there's way more of us than there are the people that have a whole lot. It don't matter if you're black, red, green, blue, whatever. It doesn't matter about your race, your culture. It's just when it comes to class in this country, there are more people who don't have a lot compared to those that do. And those that don't have, those that do have a lot somehow are able to implant narratives that keep us separated instead of realizing that it works a lot better if we work together. But that's why I love Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is the culmination of all of these different nodes, regardless of who a person is. They can run a node and participate in the network where all of us value and add value to one another by participating in the first place, right? That's the mentality of decentralization. That's how it works, right? That's the beauty of all of this.
Yeah. And I've been trying to, I don't know if I'm gonna write a piece yet and put it up in Bitcoin Magazine, but it's something that I've definitely been looking into. Even when you look at like the original, I guess like pioneers of America in terms of like Vanderbilt, Carnegie, like a lot of the legacy names, when they were younger, they were like young and hungry men that were, they're not maybe the best people to work for. I'm not going to forgive them for what they did to people that work under them or with them. But they were like really strong, I'd say, through their 20s and maybe even into their early 30s. But then when they saw people starting to outcompete them, that's kind of when they joined with the US government and basically was strong arming and basically created what was legal monopolies. And they were able to build wealth by exactly that, by destroying other people instead of actually bringing more value. Right. I will give them credit for the way that they built it up from the beginning. But when they saw other people starting to come in and potentially outcompete them, that's when they needed, someone else to bail them out or basically to keep them in power.
Are you saying that America's built on cheaters? Is that what you're saying? What is going on here? But it's so funny that you're saying that, because that's the Fed, right? The Fed is a system of cheating. If you think about it, it's like if any system that's built on top of debt is already a cheating system. Because if I only have one apple in this entire economy and I lend that apple to you and tell you I need that apple plus an apple back, but there's only one apple, how the heck you get the other apple? There has to be some work that is done. So now all of a sudden I've created a slave out of you. I've made you a slave because now you have to create something that you didn't even have from the beginning. So and I don't have to do anything, especially if I can just keep printing it. I can keep printing and lending it to you and keep you working for the rest of your life, because you always got to pay me back. Me, I'm just waiting for you to pay me back, and then I'll make another slave and get you to pay me back, and I'll make another slave, right? And that's what this system is built on. Like it was originally built, of course, on the backs of slaves. Like, you know what I'm saying? Ancestors of my own. Like, I've been able to look back into my ancestry and see the plantations that some of the people in my ancestry lines come from. It built on those slaves. But now we have an entire country full of slaves. We got and as a matter of fact, a lot of people who go to college, they didn't do nothing but create slaves out of them too. They got crazy up to the eyeball debt for going to get a degree that you can't go out here and find a job for, but you definitely have to keep working to pay it. And if you don't work to pay it, that's something that ain't never come off your credit report. And so now you got even more slaves. So any country that is like trying to, instead of thinking about freedom and how can we free the people, trying to figure out ways to lock you up so you're always working until you're 65 and you get some little fake gold watch and you like, they saying, hey, and you get the gold watch and retire from there, but then you still wind up at Walmart greeting people. Like, come on, man. Like it's crazy. We are too rich of a country for it to end like that for so many of our people, man. Period.
Yeah. And even we're very privileged that we're in the United States in the sense that we have the global reserve currency. So that definitely gives us the ability to buy goods from other countries. But if you're not in the United States, or you're not even a G7 nation, I mean, Greg Foss says this, Argentina is technically a G20 country and they've defaulted 4 times in my lifetime. I'm 29. So that just gives you an idea of like, they're a top 20 country. What are the remaining 180 plus? you know,
Right.
that they're struggling to get by being forced to use the US dollar hegemony.
Right.
So I guess this is a good transition into Bitcoin and the American dream. So I know you had an all-star cast with our own Pete Rizzo from Bitcoin Magazine, along with CJ Wilson, Amanda Cavalieri. I think Gary Leland was another author.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
I'm leaving a few people out. Jimmy Song.
Annalise
Annalise.
Witherspoon. Yeah. I don't ever say her name wrong. I'm sorry, Annalise. Annalise Witherspoon. I think that's how you say it. Witherspoon and yeah, Jimmy Song. I think and Charlene Federico.
Okay.
To name everybody. We're gonna name everybody.
So how was it coming together to write that book? And then what did you learn from, you know, Jimmy Song's from Texas, you're from Kentucky, Pete's, I believe, from New York or Boston area.
Boston, yeah.
Yeah. So what did you learn with coming together and meeting with all them? I know we're all Bitcoiners under the same thing, but what did you guys learn from each other from their past and stuff?
I mean, the coolest part about all of that is that it was probably the most diverse group of individuals you could put into a house to talk about Bitcoin. We had people from all different like walks of life, beliefs, Christians, non-Christians. Like it was crazy having all of these people in this house to write about how Bitcoin affects them and how we see Bitcoin as almost as a way of life in America for us to reach the new American dream, right? And so the process was amazing. Jimmy Song, it's called Book Sprint, where you start writing the book on a Monday and you finish by Saturday. Craziest thing I've ever been a part of. It makes you, because at the beginning you're writing individually, then you come together and tear each other's stuff apart, and then you mad at each other because somebody tore your stuff down that you spent so much time on. But then by the end of it, you one cohesive unit and you come out with a work of art like Bitcoin and American Dream, which we've had great reviews on, even in its early stages. We actually just did the true official launch last week. And shout out to everybody who's read Bitcoin and American Dream. But yeah, I think it's a very important book. I think policymakers, they don't have a good enough education about Bitcoin and how it can actually help their constituents. We were talking to a politician earlier today, and I'm like, politicians should never be like, this is how Bitcoin helps me. They should always be thinking about how something helps their constituents, because they're supposed to be public servants, right? That's really what it is. It boils down to them being public servants. And so when I think about Bitcoin and American Dream, it gives them a quick, easy read for them to kind of get an understanding of how Bitcoin can actually help their constituents, and how it shouldn't be looked at as a tool of something that they should be averse to. It should be a tool of help, a tool of adding value to the constituency, a tool of adding value to the people of America. And I think that's why that book is going to be so important, because we're going to get in it. It's a book finally written for the politician, for the policymaker.
Yeah, and I think you have a good point too. I mean, the politicians are kind of slave to the game as well, you know, with this financial system. You know, they're supposed to be public servants for you and me and the taxpayers or whatever jurisdiction they're from. But you just follow the money and you can see that they're more public servants for the corporations that are running the outlandish debt that they have, or, you know, offering stock or whatever it may be. I mean, look no further than the pandemic of 2020 to look where public interest and, you know, Congress's pocketbooks lie. And, you know, do they want to do something that potentially harms their life savings and earnings, or do they want to better it and increase it?
Right. Yeah, that's what's crazy, because like you said, the fiat system, because of all the money printing, the people closest to the printer are the ones that winds up having the power, right? Because they wind up getting it at the earlier stage. They don't have to slave as much as the other people, because their interest rates are way lower. And so what you see is that these companies that can borrow at very low rates and all of that, they can use that money to put into campaigns and sway things like the Carnegies or whatever, right? Like how the system was built. So yeah, man, you hit the nail on the head, but that's because of a fiat system. That's because this system is built that way. So you don't have to really do anything really grand. You might get a lot of money to be bailed out because you're too big to fail. But then we use that money to keep everybody else from ever getting to the point that they're too big to fail. The system's rigged, brother. We know it.
I couldn't agree more. I think we would all love to be Michael Saylor and be able to take a cash producing asset such as your corporation, take out a debt against it, and buy way more Bitcoin than most people will ever see. But we don't have the privilege of doing that. But you and I can keep stacking in small ways from whatever we do, selling our goods and services, right, require more. So in the Bitcoin, the American Dream, do you talk about more of the technical side, you know, how it benefits just the American or globally or everything?
Yeah, we talk about Bitcoin as a savings technology because that's huge for the constituents. We talk about the Bitcoin voter, what they look like. We talk about Bitcoin and social justice, right? We talk about Bitcoin and jobs, like job creation, because most politicians, they want to help their constituents find jobs and find new industry. And Bitcoin is a great industry that creates jobs, right? It actually adds jobs. We talk about Bitcoin and energy, and not necessarily from the side of the ESG situation, but how it works, right? How Bitcoin actually helps to benefit the energy grid, because a lot of the Bitcoiners their whole plan is to get the cheapest energy possible. And what's the cheapest energy possible? Renewable energy. So it's like, right? Because once you get to renewable, you're not paying for it anymore. And so it actually accelerates the growth of renewable energy, because you have all of these Bitcoiners fighting for the next Bitcoin, but they want to use the cheapest energy possible. So they have the profits to do the investment into the infrastructure for this type of stuff. Like most of the miners that I hear about, they're trying to find natural gas off and off, or put next to a hydro, some type of hydroelectricity or whatever. And I think that's the stuff we talk about in the book. We go across a lot of many different issues and see how Bitcoin can affect those issues. And that's why I said it's great for politicians, because we go so many different ways that some politicians may be unhappy with one chapter, but love another, because this book is not partisan. It is to reach both sides. Again, like myself, I'm in the aisle. The book is be put in the aisle, and both sides can reach and grab and pull things from it to kind of make things better for their constituency.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think we had CJ Wilson on the live stream a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about, when you think about most politicians, unless they're avid readers, which most can't be of books because they're just so busy taking calls or doing whatever they do in DC. I'll let that be. I won't comment on that. But basically, if you can give him one book, what book would you give him? And he's like, that's what we were trying to write when we created this. Maybe the
Right.
Bitcoin Standard as a second book if they're really interested, because Saifedean, I think, does a really good job describing it, how it affects the system. But his might be seen more as name calling of them than that they benefit from this new system. So I hope you guys kind of bridge the gap between the two.
Yeah.
Lamar, thanks so much for coming on. Is there anything else you want to add or talk about?
Nah, man, shout out to Bitcoin Magazine. Y'all keep doing what you're doing. Shout out to everyone over there. Of course, my co-author, Pete Rizzo, he's definitely a contributor to Bitcoin Mag. I'm gonna try to see if I can write some more stuff for the mag as well. But nah, man, I have nothing else. Just make sure you find me anywhere. BIGMARH, Big Mar, everywhere. BIGMARH. You can find me on all platforms like that. And follow me. If you don't want to, don't follow me. Either way. And make sure you come and check out the blackbitcoinbillionaire.com as well. Blackbitcoinbillionaire.com. No S, just Black Bitcoin Billionaire. And come check that out. We put a lot of news stuff out. Got some great writers there as well. Come check us out, man. We are completely in, always trying to educate people on what this new money system is and how Bitcoin helps to foster a new American dream. You know what I'm saying? So
Lamar, it's a pleasure having you on. I have a bone to pick with you and Pete because I still don't have the book yet.
Man, what's Pete doing, man? I don't know what he's doing, man. He needs to get you the book, man.
Yeah, so I'll hit up Pete after this and see where I can go buy the book to support you guys. And
listen, tell him don't make you buy it. Tell him to give you a book.
All right, sounds good.
If he don't give it to you, I'll give it to you, but Peter give it to you.
All right, sounds good. I'll make sure they'll have a copy no later than the conference. So I'm looking forward to seeing you, Lamar. Thanks for everything that you do. Looking forward to if you publish more stuff in Bitcoin Magazine. I do more of the video content, but you know where to find us to get more written content on our magazine. So Pleasure having you on. Look forward to having you again in the future, and looking forward to you speak at the conference.
Yes, sir, man. Nice interview. It is really nice meeting you in video.
Yes, definitely.
See you later, man.
Peace out, Lamar. Guys, we'll be back real quick. We're going to have a short break with ads, and then I'll be coming back with Nolan for another episode of The Breakup. Catch you guys in a little bit. What's up, everyone? We're back. We're waiting still on Nolan to get with us. But what do you guys think of that interview with Lamar? Pretty good interview. Excited to hear him speak at the conference. Excited to read Bitcoin, the American Dream. I'll actually include that link in the chat right now. Bitcoin. Any other news break about Russia and Ukraine? So as I was saying before, I'm really excited for the Bitcoin conference. It's going to be April 6th through the 9th in Miami Beach, Florida. We've got, an awesome list of speakers coming out more and more with them every day. Jordan Peterson was just announced. I'm looking forward to the Kathy Wood and Michael Saylor fireside chat. President Bukele, who said he has a surprise, Elizabeth Stark of Lightning Labs, Jack Mallers, we had him on yesterday. Joe Jorgensen, leader of the Libertarian Party, Andrew Yang, JP Sears, Senator Loomis is going to be there, Andre Neves from Zebedee. It's going to be awesome. I'm also really looking forward to this. I completely forgot about Pitch Day. Pitch Day is basically like we're creating, pitching for Bitcoin, but it's basically going to be like Shark Tank. Kevin O'Leary will actually be one of the sharks for Pitch Day. I think there's 5 people on that panel that'll be listening for people for pitching ideas in the Bitcoin space. So really, really excited for that. Nick Carter will be there of Castle Island Adventures, Ventures. D++, she's a Bitcoin Lightning educator. She'll be there as well. Really looking forward to the mining for the streets with Matt Odell, the Econo Alchemist, Coin Heated Diverter, and John Stephalopoulos. Really looking forward to the Sound Money Music Festival. I hope you guys liked that official trailer. Logic, Steve Aoki, CL, Deadmau5, Run the Jewels, San Holo. It's going to be really, really awesome. Looking forward to, like I said, Seed Signer, looking forward to the Impervious browser. Anything else you guys are really looking forward to at the Bitcoin conference? Hanging out with plebs. Russia launched a war NFT. I mean, that would be pretty funny. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. And No Money G, thank you. It was a solid interview with Lamar. I've never gotten to talk to him. I mean, I've heard him speak in Clubhouse and such, but never got to talk to him or at least over Zoom, not face to face. But looking forward to seeing him and all the fellow Bitcoin plebs at the Bitcoin conference. I know I have a lot of people that I need to meet up with. I know Alex Q and I always joke that we are going to be running around like chicken with their heads cut off, but I'm going to try and talk and socialize and meet with the plebs in the evenings or in the late afternoons if I get a chance to step away. Nolan should be joining us any moment. I know he's going to have a lot of interesting things to say, probably about what's going on in Ukraine and what's Russia's retaliation, what potentially is going to happen with the SWIFT system. I know that he posted, if you go to count BTC is his Twitter account. And I know he posted the board that he'll be presenting today. Let me see if I can pull it up. Yeah, World War III psychological toolkit. So he's going to be talking about breaking down with US, what looks like a nuclear atom, Bitcoin, and then also a mushroom. So a very simple board, but we'll see how that holds up and what he talks about. He's definitely going to comment on the Ukraine, Russia stuff. And then we're going to have the pleasure of having, another Ukrainian correspondent at 3 p.m. So we'll be ending this stream and we'll start in another one. So yeah, it looks like we'll have 2 Ukrainian correspondents talking about what's going on the ground in Ukraine right now. And, I think they might be Bitcoiners. So, potentially getting out of the country, fleeing. Not that I want to cause panic or cause people to do that, but some of the videos that we've seen out of there of bombs being dropped on just like residential areas. There was a video that was pretty scary of a family, and they're just like having their phone in the second story of the building, looking out over the window, and they see a plane coming and a missile drops like right next to their house. So, I mean, I hope everyone remains safe. I hope there doesn't have to be any casualties. I know that there's been a few, I believe, but I hope they remain to a minimum, and that, war stops. I hope that if we really go on a Bitcoin standard one day, I know people always theorize about it, but the last thing I want is war, especially more war after we've been in, Afghanistan, Iraq, and all that for the better part of 20 years. And Biden pulled us out of there, but then it really sucks to go back into another war, potentially a more deadly with a world superpower. I know many people have mentioned that Putin has not commented one way or the other whether nuclear is off the table or not. I hope it is definitely off the table for humanity and for everyone's sake. If he would start using nuclear weapons, you can obviously see how the world unravels and such. But anything else, guys, from the chat? No, looking pretty good. All right, well, I will give away some sats right now. So if you guys know, we have the Earn Carrot app. QR code is in the bottom left of the screen right now if you want to scan that QR code and get the Earn Carrot app ready. And then I will be putting up sats right now. Let me refresh the code. All right, the Earn Carrot code is up on the screen right now. You guys can enter in that code into your Earn Carrot app by pressing, as soon as you open up the green redeem button, and then typing in the code manually, type in that code. There'll be only one winner only, but we have some sats up there for you guys. And once you guys redeem those sats, you can self-custody them once you get enough of them on your wallet. Okay. Still waiting on Nolan to join, and then once he gets going, we'll get going with the breakup. Oh, he's joining right now. So we're going to go to one commercial break real quick, and then we'll be back with Nolan for another episode of the breakup. All right, guys, we're back with Nolan for another episode of the breakup. I know I saw your board early because you normally post it on Twitter, but World War III psychology toolkit with America. It looks like an electron or a nucleon, or for nuclear energy, a mushroom, and then Bitcoin. So Nolan, why don't you take it away?
That's the story. That's the story. So first, a tweet by Crypto Chimp. It was the meme, the one where Tobey Maguire is Spider-Man and he's got the glasses and it's blurry and then he can see it next. And it was, we all got baited. And it was 2022. The fuzzy one was 2022 will be the year of Web3. And then he puts the glasses on. 2022 will be the year of World War III. It looks like some of our predictions were wrong, right? The show is about predictions. It's about saying them out loud, getting them on a certain record, and then, revisiting them. So we said, probably not going to be a war in Russia and Ukraine. Now there's definitely a war in Russia and Ukraine. And, if I go through the assessment of what we got wrong and what I got wrong, what was my blind spot, I think my answer is Putin, I don't think has ever done mushrooms. I think that's what I miscalculated, because I think Putin has an ego that is beyond my calculations of rationality and what, give and take, plus and minus would actually do to a human being. Not that I really believe in rationality, but there is a certain amount of survival that I just imagined would be there. But ego can be a hell of a drug, and it can definitely take over. And I'm not trying to mind read here, right? I'm not trying to mind read here. We're going to talk more about ego in a second, but I think my blind spot was I just didn't imagine what the ego was. And I probably should have known. I mentioned that I knew a guy named Boris Nemtsov, who was the prime minister of Russia under Yeltsin and did not get the promotion to be president when Putin took over. And I met him in Ottawa. It was during the Pussy Riot stuff. He was sort of making a case, and he was coming around the world to get attentions in case he went to jail, which of course he did. And then he was, but in private conversations, that was his, and someone who had known Putin, that's exactly what he told me. He says, you wouldn't imagine. It's as simple as you can imagine. The plastic surgery and all that, that's all you need to know. That's it. That's all you need to know. So I had the information, but it just didn't click. So we can do better. But so we wake up, we're in World War III. Some people get it wrong, some people get it right. What I do know is that we need to take the people who got it right more seriously than ever. And there's one name I want to bring up today because he just seems to get it right all the time. And his name is Mike Cernovich. And I'm going to relate him to this ego thing in a second, what I was talking about with ego. So here's a tweet from him today. He goes, sold uranium to Russia, Democrats. Crimea invaded, Democrats. US domestic pipeline shut down, Democrats. Nuclear power halted, Democrats. Ukraine invaded again, Democrats. Starting to notice a pattern. Now, a lot of people say that Mike Cernovich is a partisan, right-wing, right? Now, this show isn't about right or left. What I want to highlight about getting things right and predicting right is Cernovich, Mike Cernovich. If you don't know Mike Cernovich, he came to popularity in the 2016 election basically by turning the camera around at a Trump rally and putting it on the crowd and the media and who was there. He didn't care about the Trump piece. It was what was going on at the rally. And he rose to sort of national prominence. He was then interviewed by 60 Minutes where they did one of these gotcha things on him, but he had recorded it himself. And you see the 60 Minutes interviewer saying, how did you know? Because he was all about, Hillary Clinton's health and she wasn't healthy and this and that. And she collapsed on 9/11, if people remember. And he was pointing it out, like she's got major health problems. So they did this story in fake news after the 2016 election on 60 Minutes, and they interviewed him. And they cut it wrong. But in the end, in the version he had, the interviewer asked Mike Cernovich, how did you know she was sick? And he says, well, she collapsed. How did you know? And he asked back, how did you know she wasn't? And he goes, well, the campaign told us. And he went, well, you're a journalist. Like, you listen to a campaign? I mean, devastating when you see that in real life, a knockout blow, right? If that was a boxing match between a fake journalist and a real journalist, that was a straight punch right to the face, KO, game over, right? Just out. Now, an amazing thing about Cernovich is he turned toxic against Trump early. He turned toxic against Trump within months, and he would repel Trump supporters from his Twitter feed, and he would cause cognitive dissonance in people's brains when it came to Trump. He called Trump every name in the book, weak, stupid, he doesn't care. I mean, he basically turned on the very crowd that made him famous, I guess you could say, famous from the start, and he abandoned them. So anyone who does that, you've got to give them credibility. You've got to give them a lot of, you got to look to what they're predicting. So this is someone who I think isn't in the bag for any one of these brain damage things we talked about on yesterday's show and the prison of two ideas and right and left. And here's another tweet from him. Anyhow, not really much anyone can do. This is about Russia. Russia has nukes. Clearly, Putin got China's okay and has a financial situation worked out. We in the US are the biggest losers. No Keystone Pipeline, no clean nuclear power, no clout. A bunch of saps soon to be paying $6 a gallon. I think that's all you need to know about Ukraine and America, frankly. That sums it up for me. Now, the reason I bring up Mike Cernovich is because he's one of those folks who represent everything that you love about America, right? He is willing to be a rebel, willing to go against his own cause, willing to say what's on his mind. And I was lucky enough last year during Bitcoin 2021 to run a small private talk next to the event, not far away, with a sponsor who I'll mention, XBTO. They were the sponsor of Bitcoin 2021. I imagine Bitcoin 2022. And I helped them produce a show. We had Chris Giancarlo, you know, the guy who was like at the CFTC. I interviewed him a few times. He's fine. But I got Cernovich. And we did the interview on Bitcoin and mushrooms. It was just Bitcoin and psilocybin. And the conversation, so it was a private talk on the side, and it was really just about how psilocybin can at once heal a lot of Americans and PTSD and the people who have been stuck in the prison of two ideas and all that kind of stuff. And what Cernovich and I did was basically talk about how it's an opening to understand Bitcoin and more or less to understand that the crazy thing that we're doing, it's like, hey, yeah, let's just start a new financial system because this one sucks and we got to break up with it because it sucks. You know, it sounds stupid, and it sounded really stupid even in 2013 when I got started on all this mission. But nevertheless, to have the, I don't know if it's craziness or whatever it was that keeps all of us Bitcoiners going, but it's this belief that we can actually achieve this. And I think maybe mushrooms are a prerequisite to doing that. I think maybe. I'm not positive. I don't know if there are any Bitcoiners out there who've never tried it once. I don't think you have to be a regular user. We actually took mushrooms at the event to add some, you know, little flair to it. So it was Bitcoin and mushrooms on mushrooms at Bitcoin Miami 2021. And so there's big news on that. The Oregon State Senate Committee passed a measure on mushrooms and psilocybin yesterday. There's going to be a task force now that's going to basically set up all the commercial considerations, right? Where does it come from? How is it distributed? Where do you get it from? Who's in charge of this? Who's in charge of that? It's definitely going to be treated as medicine, right? This is not going to go down the same route as like cannabis in Colorado or any of that stuff. This is going to be treated very, you know, clearly. This is not a sort of recreational attempt at making psilocybin available just for fun. And I'm not recommending drugs to anybody on the show in any way. I'm just saying that one instance of this can sort of break your understanding of reality if it is too limited, and perhaps offers a way to understand Bitcoin. But in this case, what they're studying here is how it's going to help people with drug addiction and PTSD. And I think with all the craziness we've already seen over the past couple of years and all the craziness coming, this might be one of the most important things happening in the country today. Is pretty much under the radar, but that this is happening in the Oregon State Senate Committee today means that there's some real hope on the horizon. And this can help us much quicker than we realize get over some of the things affecting the country. Next, Cernovich mentioned that we have no nuclear. Mark Andreessen, if anyone doesn't know who Mark Andreessen is, he's the creator of Netscape, the original internet browser. And then he created one of the first venture capitalist firms in Silicon Valley and basically made money off everything that ever happened. So he's like one of the richest people in the world, right? And not only that, one of the smartest people in the world. And if you were in Bitcoin before the Bitcoin standard was written, for example, or other important, you know, Brandon Quitlam's piece on mushrooms and Bitcoin, I'd say is one of those other ones, to Gigi, you know, there's a few pieces out there that are go-to now. But before any of that happened, other than the white paper, Mark Andreessen's 2014 New York Times article, Why Bitcoin Matters, was what got a lot of people through the troubling market crash of that era. And Mt. Gox, you know, whatever, 8 years ago yesterday was just a few weeks after that. So this document was actually really helpful. It was cited, anyone who was writing about Bitcoin back then was citing it in almost everything we wrote. And waking up today to the Russian news, he tweeted, build 1,000 new state-of-the-art nuclear power plants in the US and Europe right now. We won't, but we should. So Mark Andreessen, another one of these Americans who has had a lot to do with building the modern world, understood Bitcoin really early, has been building stuff since then, is telling you that if we built 1,000 new state-of-the-art nuclear power plants, all this trouble would be over. That the Russia-Ukraine thing wouldn't even be a consideration to us. And I think he's right. And that's why nuclear power and what we're going to talk about next, Bitcoin, are the two most important things in the kit, right? Mushrooms are pretty important too. So the next piece here, I wanted to introduce a new character to the show today. I'm not gonna be able to do it. I wanted to get a pair of glasses, and it would be like, what JP Sears does sometimes, and I wasn't gonna be talking about JP Conning. It wasn't gonna be talking about JP Conning. JP Conning is a former staffer for the Bank of Canada and writes some stuff. He's been in Bitcoin for a long time. So my new character was gonna be based on JP Sears, and it wasn't JP Conning, but he was going to read a JP Conning tweet. Okay, you catch it? So if I had the glasses, I would do it now. I'll try and do it with the affectation I was trying to come up with. So imagine me with glasses on right now. This is what JP Conning said. He's Canadian. 2 Canadian courts have issued 2 Mariva injunctions on crypto wallets in 2 months. First, the injunction on the coins stolen in last year's indexed finance hack. And now the Chugger Convoy's Bitcoin fundraiser, unstoppable internet coins, meet the law. Right? So JP Sears, that was my impression of JP Sears, not JP Conning. Okay, but I read JP Conning stuff, just so you know. So JP Conning has this idea that what happened in Canada, this unstoppable internet coins, had met the law. Because Mariva injunctions, he says, Mariva injunctions. What are Mariva injunctions? I'll tell you, they're injunctions. They don't actually even take your funds. Like, it's not a seizure of your Bitcoin, by the way. Right? A Mariva injunction is, hey, you don't do that. It's not good. Stop it. Right? That's a Mariva injunction. That's it. That's all there is to it. And my question to JP is, how does a Mariva injunction scale? Like, you just give 1 million of them and then everyone stops transacting their Bitcoin, I guess. So it's effective. Like, the unstoppable internet money has met a Mariva injunction, right? Like, it's over. I give up. It's done, right? Is that it? So, one of the things that it reminds me of, and I don't want to single out JP Conning. I love his pictures when he puts out old money and coins and has puts them on Twitter all the time, silver dollars with things knocked out. And he's got this really great one where it's, what is it? It's a North, how does it work? Yeah, it's a North Irish bill, like a note, like money, from the Bank of Denmark, denominated in British pounds. You know what I mean? Like, that's cool stuff. He's really good at that stuff. Like, he's got a lot of interests, But what I want to talk about, I guess, I don't mean it as an insult, but let's call it like a hipster affectation, right? A hipster affectation. When someone's like, oh, I knew that band first. I knew the band before anyone. Oh, I knew the band, right? Was there really early. I knew them before you, but now I don't like them because they're too popular, right? I knew them first, but now I don't like them because they're too popular. That sort of humble brag to me comes from there being no skin in the game in the credentialist world, basically, right? In the credentialist world, you don't own anything. It's just a reputation for being there early or not or whatever. So in the end, you've got to do this kind of humble brag, right? You've got to say like, one of the things I love about royalty coins and royalty systems and the ability for creators to interact directly with fans is this idea that we can actually reward early fandom and give people a way to profit off their taste and do well because they saw something come first. Bitcoin does that inherently, right? People who get to Bitcoin, you don't have to brag about when you got into Bitcoin, trust me. You could say it. Anyone who brags about it is making a mistake. People will say it about you, right? Because usually you're living well, right? And you don't really need to get people to go like, wow, that person's doing really well. That just sort of happens naturally. And so what I think is that anyone who might have known about Bitcoin early, maybe like it was a band, right? Like, about them early, but you got to tell people that you don't really like them anymore because there's no other way to let them know you were early. There's no other way. You can't tell anyone you were also early and then you got nothing to show for it, right? So you got to be like, wow, unstoppable internet coins meet the law, right? You gotta be like that because you don't have a choice, right? This is the way it goes down. I don't make the rules. I can't do anything about it. But all I know is in the future, as the Bitcoin standard takes over, one of my predictions is, right? I might have been wrong about Russia, but I'm telling you what I'm going to be right about. I'm going to be right that the hipster affectation is gone. We're not going to see it anymore, right? You're going to have people who are going to be celebrated for their taste, and people will brag for them. And people like JP won't have to act like that in the future because people are going to talk about them, right? They're going to talk about them. And that's good. So we'll all be getting along. And so we'll be out of this World War II for a little while. And sorry, I didn't even tie one loop. I want to tie one loop about the mushrooms. We talked about quickly the, it's coming in medicine and Putin. I just want to tie the loop on that. How I made a mistake on the Russian prediction because he didn't take mushrooms. One of the things that mushrooms does great, right, is that it sort of compresses the ego and allows you to see past yourself, frankly, right? Which we all have trouble doing sometimes. No one wants to be wrong. No one wants blind spots. You'll try to be right even against the odds sometimes. I think Putin needs to take some mushrooms. So if anyone wants to give him some mushrooms, it'll all be over right after. All right, so that's the breakup for today. Thanks, everyone.
Nolan, I want to touch on two quick things before we wrap up, because I know we have an exclusive interview with a couple Ukrainians that are on the ground in Ukraine. And obviously, in light of everything that's going on, that's very important. We don't want to take too much more of their time. But the JP Conning quote, just like him saying, oh, they've met the law and they can't transact, or they're being told they can't. This specifically reminds me, I think over almost a year ago, or maybe even a little bit longer, when the one public miner that was trying to do OFAC compliant blocks, and then the one Iranian transaction came through with an op return that basically said we did it anyway or something like that, or I don't know the full translation, but it was definitely an op return where they burned Bitcoin just to prove that you're OFAC compliant blocks, but a Bitcoin holder in Iran sent, and they were one of the OFLAC non-compliant countries. So basically showing that even though they were trying to remove transactions that weren't supposed to be in that block, it ultimately came through just because of the way the network operates.
Exactly. And so, I mean, that's why I ask, how's it going to scale, right? Okay, two people. All right, I get it, right? What happens if it's every trucker, right? What happens if it's every whatever, Black Lives Matter supporter? You can't stop it, right? You can't stop it. And that's why this is sort of the psychological toolkit, right? If you have confidence in energy policy, if your ego isn't, in the way of you admitting you're wrong or whatever, and we move to a Bitcoin standard with a lot of American values, we're going to make it. We're going to make it.
Definitely. I'll add one more point and then we'll wrap up so we can end the stream a little bit early to get on the other one. But wealthy people don't brag about how much they have. That's what rich people do. And that was kind of a big connotation that I've always seen. There's a guy on TikTok that he'll do exactly like the JP Sears that you're talking about. He'll have rich person and they're yelling at a waitress saying how their meal's not ready. And then it shows ultra rich person. And they're like, I'm so sorry. I know you've had a rough day. Here's an extra $20 on the tip. I know it's not your fault. It was probably the chef was having an off day. So I just think that goes to show money doesn't change people. It just kind of reveals who they are.
Yeah, you got it, man. And it's even this idea that that there's a Yogi Berra quote, right? Nobody goes there anymore. It's too popular, right? And that's kind of it, right? There's a certain amount of self-assurance. It's not ego. It's not ego. It's a certain amount of confidence that comes at a certain point. And it doesn't even matter how much money. I think Putin might be the richest person in the world if it's not CZ or the other people we don't know about, right? Some people have said he is. He might be. I mean, they got a lot of gas. So when I think about that, right, it's not even a number amount. If you're sitting there and you have that much money and you can't stop putting the Botox into your face, what good is it, right? And now he can't travel anywhere. Where's he gonna go? Yeah. I've been to Russia. It's fine. It's nice. I get okay, but it's not that great, right? There's other places. So, I mean, who knows? There's a lot more to the story that we're all seeing, and here we're just trying to follow the money the best we can. But
yeah. Thanks
Take
so
some
much,
mushrooms.
Nolan. Thanks for
Don't have
another.
a big don't have a big ego.
Yep. Thanks so much, Nolan. Thanks for another episode of the Breakup. I know Alex will be hopping on here. We're going to be ending this stream, and we're going to have a quick outro, and then we'll be starting up another stream, meeting with our Ukrainian correspondents about everything that's going on. So we'll see you in a few minutes, everyone. Should be starting right around 3 p.m. Eastern. See you later, Nolan. Have a good one.
Yeah, man.